Добро пожаловать. So getting straight into it, I usually start every single upper body workout with this exact routine that I'm going to be outlining in the next couple of minutes. Kicking it off with external rotations, using the cable machine, setting up the cable at about hip height, and here I'm using my thin wrist wrench to warm up with. Now you could use any handle you deem necessary. If the gym has a D handle or anything else that's just a typical neutral grip handle, that will do just fine. But here I'm trying to knock out some static work for my extensors, while at the same time warm up my shoulder girdle. About 2 to 3 sets, typically about 10 to 15 reps. Follow that up with some radial deviation, also known as the rise in arm wrestling. Nothing too wild over here, just keep attention on the brachioradialis, as well as those finer components of the musculature that makes up the riser muscles in the forearm. Follow that up with some pronations, going as far as my range of motion would allow both ways. Also, one thing I'm keeping in mind while I do all of these wrist warm-ups and for my forearm is I'm kind of taking a mental inventory of how everything is feeling. If my wrist, if my pronator, if everything else is feeling fine. And even if not, then what I would just do is just put in more blood flow through all those areas. And here I have some ulnar deviation going on, also known as the chop in arm wrestling, to put some blood into my ulnar side of my forearm. And those 4 movements I would sequence in a circuit sort of fashion, where I would be mixing up the order in which I would be performing them, but typically I'd be putting the external rotations first, and then I would follow that up with a variant of those different wrist warm-ups. So you'd see sometimes that I put pronations before I put the ulnar deviations, or the radial deviation before I put the ulnar, and vice versa, as long as I get the blood flow into those areas to warm them up. After all those external rotations and wrist warm-ups, I would then get into warming up my shoulder girdle a whole lot more with some rear delt dumbbell flies. When performing these, I try to lead the movement with the hands, just trying to get above where my shoulder is situated on my body. With these, I switch it up and I use my hands almost as hooks, and I lead the movement with my elbows. And same idea here, trying to bring my elbows above where my shoulder line is on my body. And quickly thereafter, I would follow them up with some dumbbell rows for the lats to fire those up as well. The reason being is to, other than feeling good, is to have a good platform to press off from when I perform my chest movements later. Although I do have a set warm-up routine, I would recommend that you take as many warm-up sets and exercises as well as repetitions that you need to prime your body right for the workout ahead. Following up all those rigid motions with the dumbbells, I would also get into some free motion sort of movements, just throwing my hands around really, doing some arm swings, arm circles, so on and so forth, making sure everything's feeling right. And now for the first working exercise of the day, I'm going to be getting into the incline dumbbell press. You know, my favorite setting on the bench lately has been that 10 to 15 degree incline. It's been my bread and butter for a good little while. And here we have it, first warm-up set. Now, typically for any single day that I'm working out, I'll always start out with a warm-up set that would be about 30% of my 1 rep max on any given exercise, which for this one just happens to be 45 pounds. Nothing to it, just putting blood through the muscle, and then also taking that mental inventory of how everything is feeling. Next up, I'd follow that up with a 50% warm-up set, doing the very same thing from the set before. And now we get right into the work with this first movement. 80-pound dumbbells for 4 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions. If I'm given a rep range of 10 to 12, I'm always going to be pushing for that 12. I don't like to shortchange myself and do whatever's least prescribed. After all that warming up, and just from that first set alone, got a good sweat going in that compression shirt. So we're going to opt out and put on something else. It's going to let the arms breathe a little bit while I put in the rest of the work throughout this workout. And figure while we're at it, we're going to get out those boots and slip into something a lot more breathable. And we're on our way, resuming our workout with set number 2 over here with the 80-pound dumbbells. Feeling well in control. This is just a workout where I'm working on my work capacity, more of a volume workout, so the weight is not too challenging. And it doesn't get challenging until about set 3 or set 4, or sometimes not at all if I rest adequately in between sets. Now, as the weeks go on with the training block, the intensity will go up. So this whole workout that I'm doing here today is not indicative of what I'm doing every single week. This is just one snapshot of 1 week within a training block. Now, as tournaments get closer, however, the exercise would get a lot more specialized for arm wrestling. A lot of what you'll see here in this video and in the next 2 to come, you'll see it's a lot more hypertrophy-based exercising. And that's just to build a good, well-rounded musculature and connective tissue for everything to come in the months leading up to the tournament. And very swiftly, we're going to get right into incline chest fly. Just like with the dumbbell press, I'm just trying to achieve a somewhat reasonable range of motion, getting a good stretch, good contraction, and controlling the weight as it's being moved through space. And as will be the theme for the rest of the workout, the weight selected is going to be about 60% of my 1 rep max for this exercise. Couple things to note. I do keep a small arch in my back, and especially as I reach deeper into the stretch of this exercise, I would expand the arch a little bit more to allow me to put a lot more stress through my chest. Quick recommendation: in between sets or even exercises of which you're performing, I'd recommend that you stretch whichever muscles that you just worked out. This will ensure that you're not building up too much lactic acid throughout that muscle and will allow you to continue working out at a high performance rate rather than giving up on the workout due to too much of a pump. Firing off our first arm wrestling specific exercise, we have the wrist wrench wrist curl. The way the wrist wrench is built is trying to peel out of your hands the whole time that you are holding it. So it's really crucial that you keep your wrist integrity intact the whole entire time. Now, as you can see, I set the handle really deep into my hand to ensure I have good and proper containment. So it's going to be targeting my finger muscles all the way through the full range of motion. Something to keep in mind: the larger the thickness of the handle that you're holding, the less wrist flexion you can perform. Meaning, if I'm holding a bigger wrist wrench, then I can only bend my wrist so far in, okay, meaning to a smaller degree. And if I'm holding a thinner wrist wrench or a thinner handle, I could perform a bigger range of motion through my wrist just because of how the musculature in the hand is built. Back at it again with more chest destruction, we have the pec deck chest fly. Now, the rationale as to why I have 2 fly movements for the chest rather than 2 press movements for the chest in this workout is because I'm trying to build the frame for my chest abduction strength. On the table, it's more so of a fly movement that you're performing rather than a chest press movement that you're performing to internally rotate and also hold your opponent at center. So I would deem that the chest fly movements are a lot more table translatable and definitely really worth doing. If I was to rank a chest press variation versus a chest fly variation for arm wrestling, I would likely put the chest fly ahead of the chest press. Here to aid us in building a well-rounded arm, we have the V-bar tricep pushdown. Now, in your workouts, you can choose whichever kind of tricep extension that tickles your fancy, but this is my favorite and my most powerful variation of the tricep pushdown. Now with this, I'm just trying to build a balance in my arm musculature. I already get a lot of stimulus in my biceps and my brachialis. Building up the tissue in your triceps is only going to be helpful for elbow health and also power output on the table. These are kept simple. I just bring my elbows down close to my hips, try and keep them stationary, and just work through my triceps being stretched, pushing straight down with my hands, and then getting opened up. Rinse and repeat, 10 to 12 reps. Taking a pause from that quick flexing intermission, we have ulnar nerve glides. These are for putting your ulnar nerve back on its rightful track, as arm wrestling training gets pretty awkward on the body. It can oftentimes take it off its rightful place and leave you with tingling on your bottom two fingers. So those are definitely helpful to throw in between sets. Here we got a different flavor of wrist curls. We have the conical handle wrist curl. Here I have my hand situated on the thicker part of the cone, and this is designed so I could work on keeping my containment through my bottom two fingers. Reason why this is so crucial and important is because when facing a low hand top roller that's trying to bust through your bottom two fingers, you want to be able to contain them, not give them the option on giving so much purchase into your bottom of the hand. More often than not, if they're able to crack through the bottom of your hand, through your pinky finger and your ring finger, then they'll be able to flop your wrist over in a top roll manner a whole lot easier. Now, finishing off this workout, here we have the supinated shoulder press. I would wrap the band through supination. All I've got to do now is bring my shoulder forward and press that weight straight down. Now, this movement is really great in reinforcing the idea of how to actually press on the table. And what I mean by that is you have to really be able to understand how to stack all your joints together and get behind your arm, so to speak, to press somebody down. Now, if I was just to do supination, or rather side pressure through supination, that would make this movement a whole lot tougher if I was not bringing my shoulder forward. A common misconception is that when you perform a press in arm wrestling, you are actively pressing with your triceps straight into your opponent's hand or straight down to the table. But that's not quite so. Your tricep is playing more of a stationary integrity type of role, as you are stacking all your joints, keeping your bicep and everything locked in, almost like flexing your bicep, and then you're stacking your shoulder and your wrist and your elbows all in one straight line, and then bringing your body straight down into the table. Pressing just purely in a tricep extension kind of motion would really limit you in all the power output that you could put in when you're pressing your opponent to the pad. And now, with all that hard work out of the way, I can now begin my recovery process. And that takes the form of me using my foam roller to break up all that adhesion that I built up in whichever muscles that I worked that day. Now, my brachialis definitely gets a whole lot of love from all of the workouts that I put into it, and especially anything that it has any sort of side pressury type of feel to it, it creates a whole lot of adhesion, a whole lot of buildup of tissue that gets bound up. And it's really important for anyone really to break all of that up in order to not have that toothache feeling throughout your arm for the remainder of the week. And typically I would just roll out with the foam roller for as long as it feels right, and I would do that for about 2 to 3 times before I get into stretching. Now, stretching is kept simple. I just focus on whichever muscles were being worked that day. So here we start with the triceps, both arms of course. Putting some tension on the muscle that I'm stretching, pushing against the hand and securing it just to ensure a deeper stretch. Then we'll get to some rear delt stretches. They definitely got a whole lot of love in the activation phase of the workout right in the beginning, and they were doing a whole lot of stabilizing throughout the workout, so we're going to give them some love. And once again, with whatever muscle that I'm going to be stretching, I'm going to put some tension through it to ensure a deeper stretch. And here that last stretch is a chest and front delt stretch. This one's pretty simple. I'll just take my knuckles, push them into my lower back, bring my chest forward, bring my delts backward, and elbows also backwards and in close towards each other to ensure a good deep stretch in my front delt. Follow that up with some more dynamic stretches, some arm swings, some arm circles, and that's it for the day. Now I'd say today's workout got a pretty good pump going, so here I am just checking out the goods.